How's it going, guys? Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Phil Talk Sports Podcast. Joining me in his return is Nick Rice, and I could be wrong, but I think this is the first time he's not looking forward to doing a podcast after what happened on Wild Card Weekend. We are down to the Elite Eight. The Divisional playoffs are this weekend, so we're going to talk what happened last week, what's going to happen this week, and we're going to throw a few other things in there if there's time. So, Nick, we'll just jump right into it. Normally, I'll do the games in order, but we want to give this as much time as we can. Have you recovered from what's happened over the past weekend to your Chargers?
Actually, what's crazy with most football games, I can compartmentalize, but yeah, I'm still recovering. That was probably the most heartbreaking loss, and I know it's fun to exaggerate, but it really was the most heartbreaking loss. I mean, there's even that video of halftime where some Charger fan goes to sleep. I don't know why they would want to go to sleep, but I felt like one of those where the second half was literally a daze. So, and I could see the death in slow motion. It was probably, it'll go down as probably one of the most heartbreaking sports moments I've ever had. That was insane.
So I did last week's episode solo. I gave my picks for the games. I gave your picks for the games so we could jump right onto this. We both picked the Chargers, and what my thinking was, I was trying to not be biased on the fact that I had a great time at a Jaguars game the week before. And I'm like, I can't let that cloud my judgment. I know, Chargers on paper, the roster, that's a better team. I should pick the Chargers. I got to put my Duval bias away and, pick the Chargers. And I did. And that first half goes by, and Asante Samuel Jr. has the game of his life, which I was happy to see because, Asante Samuel Sr., his dad, was one of the greatest Eagles cornerbacks of all time. He's also won Super Bowls with the Patriots, finished his career with a nice little run with the Falcons, one of my favorite players of all time. So to see his son ball out in a stage like that, I was all for him. Like, hey, this game will be remembered as the Asante Samuel Jr. game, and that's just going to be what NFL films preserves. And then they score right before halftime. And I saw somebody put on Twitter, what are the chances the Jags come back in this? And I said, I will be really kind to them and I'll give them a 10% chance. And then
that's really kind.
And that person gave them a 15% chance. And I'm like, okay, like that's fair. I'm not going to argue over the 5%. And then we just rolled into the second half. We shouldn't even bypass the first half because I don't think I've seen a quarterback play a worse half of football. There's Trigger. He's already here.
There he is.
Than Trevor Lawrence did, throwing 4 picks in the first half.
By the way, fittingly, a black cat would roll by when we talk Chargers collapses.
That's true.
That is a very fitting way for him to come in.
That's very true. But I don't think I've ever seen somebody throw that many interceptions. And the way they were thrown, I think the story that needs to be talked here is like, if I'm him or the average quarterback is him, I'm afraid to throw another pass in the second half, let alone fling it all over the yard like he did and come back and get the win. So that first half, it's a shame that Asante Samuel Jr.'s performance is not going to be what we take away from this game. But it's just one of those things that you could never have predicted this happening going into the second half. It was crazy.
Yeah, you do hear, games where a quarterback will throw 4 or 5 picks in a game and all of a sudden their career is over. Like it's one of those things where you can completely demoralize your future in a game like that. It's incredible to see him come back. It seems like the analytics crowd, where ESPN and Pro Football Focus and stuff like that gave the Chargers like a 99.9% chance. And I don't know about you, but it seems like more and more these 99% likelihoods, it seems like they happen more and more now, like it almost as if that percentage is not entirely accurate because, we saw a 1 in a million Viking comeback and then against the Colts and then this. But the narrative now this whole week is that, Justin Herbert blew it. And to me, I think that is a silly argument because even though, I know he could have done more in the second half, the fact that the Chargers in their final 5 drives just needed to stop Lawrence once,
right,
or even just force him into a field goal and they couldn't do it. To me, that's a storyline that's kind of floating under the radar. Maybe that's because of how great of a first half Samuel had.
Well, it is hard to blame somebody because it's like, can you blame the offense? They put up 30 points. You can't blame the defense because they forced 4 turnovers. Trevor Lawrence was dangerously close to pulling what's known as the Delhomme, which is when you throw 5 interceptions in a game and one of them is a pick six. Not quite the DeLone performance, but he was
Huh.
dangerously close to that. So it is hard. It's who can you blame? And at the time of this recording, I believe the Chargers coach is still intact. This is what
Still
6
is.
o'clock on a Thursday as we record. This might come out tomorrow. It might be a Friday news dump. Who knows? But as of right now, he's still the coach. Do you expect that to remain the case?
I expect it to remain the case. I've
Really?
been familiar with the Spanos family and all that for too long. I think because he is a low salary coach coming off a playoff appearance. Now we've seen him dump a playoff coach before, Marty Schottenheimer, but I believe that that's going to stay. I think the movement that was going to happen did happen. OC Joe Lombardi's gone and passing coach Shane Day's gone. So the offense is going to look different. I think that will give Herbert a boost because everybody in Chargers, fandom was talking about how Justin Herbert, he's getting treated like a Jake Delhomme, a lot of checkdowns, a lot of short
Yeah.
throws, not taking advantage of a top 3 arm in the NFL. So, deep ball arm in the NFL. I don't think he's gone. He had a press conference yesterday talking about how much they've improved. Brandon Staley did over the course of this year. I think people are trying to see the GM go. I don't think he's the problem. Last year, the Chargers had 6 Pro Bowlers, tied for most in the NFL, and a lot of those guys are back. So this team's talented. It seems for the last decade, it's not been talent; it's been late game blunders, and it's been stuff like this. So I think the coaching staff stays, and a lot of it stays. And I think the Chargers, talent-wise, are a very good team. It's just there's something about this black cat running through the franchise. This is something about it. We figure out a way to lose.
Yeah, I mean the whole factor when I was picking the game is like Chargers kind of need to win this or it starts to hinder on Herbert's legacy. And I think it's at
Yep.
the point where it's like talent is not an issue for them. We know that across the board. So it's one of those where they really have to bounce back next year. There was already talk about like, oh, if Sean Payton gets in there, it's the perfect position for him. But like you said, the Chargers management, whether it's in San Diego or here in LA, there in LA, I should say, they're notoriously cheap owners. So I don't think
Yep.
not only are they not going to fire this guy necessarily, but they're also not going to go outbid other teams for Sean Payton, which would include having to throw a little something to the Saints because he's still under contract with them. You have to give a third or a fourth round pick just to have the opportunity to hire the guy, which is a unique circumstance, of course. But here's one thing that might cheer you up, Nick. You might have lost the Chargers game, but as far as our NFL picks, you're actually one game ahead of me. You are 4-2 in
Oh,
picks,
really?
and I am 4-3. I'm going to run through those real quick. We
Four and
both picked the
three.
Chargers. That didn't work. We both picked the Bengals. You were going to pick the Ravens if Lamar Jackson played. He did not, so we both had the Bengals.
To
Good
be
there.
honest, if he played, I think my pick would have been right. By the
I
way.
assume because if he doesn't try to like John Morant dunk on the goal line and fumble the ball, I
Yep.
assume he just runs in low like that play would you would want to do.
Right.
We picked the Bills. That was seemed like an easy pick, but that game was also closer than we expected it to be. You picked the Cowboys, where I picked Tampa. We'll talk about that in a minute. You picked the Giants, and I'm sorry, you picked the Vikings. I also picked the Vikings, and then we both picked the Niners. So what other game did I do that math wrong? I
Yeah.
got Tampa.
You
Yeah,
said
okay.
4-3. What other playoff game were you watching?
Okay, so okay, no, because I got the Cowboys game wrong, the Chargers game wrong, and the Vikings game wrong. Where you only got the
Oh,
Chargers and
so you were
Vikings wrong.
three and
So I was
three.
right. I was right. I got one more game wrong than you. So you are in first place going in to these divisional
All
rounds.
right.
The rest of
Cool.
them, the Cowboy game was difficult to watch just because other than the field goals being missed, which was, you almost did it alone with a foot, right? You missed 4 field goals, ended up getting one
Yeah.
at the end. Apparently, the Cowboys are rolling with this kicker moving forward. If that comes back to bite them in the next round, we will see. They need all the help they can get. They're playing the 49ers next. But out of all these other games, what did any of them surprise you the most? What was the other big leading point out of these wild card weekend for you?
I gotta say, I know we've been on it. This Chargers collapse, even for me, a Charger fan who's faced his fair share, that was very surprising to see them collapse the way that they did. I was on the rarer boat where I respect Tom Brady's excellence, but also saw just how good Dallas is. And
Mhm.
I have my thoughts I'd love to share with you when we talk Dallas, San Francisco at some point.
Sure.
But that was one where I still was somewhat shocked, even though even though, Tom Brady is 45, even though at some point he's going to be human, I still was shocked just how mediocre he did look in the game. And then the only other thing was, to me, what shocked me was just how this juggernaut in Buffalo was that close to losing against the team in Miami with the third string quarterback and a coach who apparently doesn't realize there's 40 seconds in a play clock.
Right.
That was incredibly frustrating to see when you're kind of rooting for an upset like that. So not much in terms of huge surprises in Wild Card Weekend. But yeah, it was a really fun week to watch.
The Bills, just to tag on that for a minute, we all had high hopes for them going into this year, and I feel like they've played down to their competition a lot this year. Like
Yeah.
they're able to throw punches with the better teams in the league, but the lower teams in the league, and the Dolphins aren't super low. They made the playoffs, but
Mhm.
with their injuries and third string quarterback and whatnot, they've played down to their opponents a lot this year, and I can see that coming back to bite them in this next round. I don't know if it's pleasantly, but I was overall surprised by the Giants. I did think the lights would be
Yeah, me
too
too. You know what?
yeah, the
That's
lights
really
would be a
cool.
little too bright for the Vikings at some point in this playoffs. I thought they'd at least get by the Giants. So I
Me
was,
too.
I'll admit that I was surprised about that. I did pick the Vikings in that game. The 49ers are looking scary, man. I mean, we'll
Yeah.
jump into the next round here in a minute. Um, but that was obviously the Chargers was the main thing. And I guess the Giants, I'd give them the second place most surprising thing there. So we'll jump to the divisional round real quick. We'll do these in order just so we can keep everything straight.
Yep.
4:30 on Saturday, we have the Jaguars, fresh off the third largest comeback in playoff history, facing the Kansas City Chiefs. Is this where this magical run runs out, or they did beat the Chiefs? I think was it earlier this year or last. Uh, what do you think their chances are of pulling out the upset against Kansas City?
By the way, speaking of magical runs, real quick, I think head coach Pete Carroll, quarterback Geno Smith need their flowers for what they did.
I agree. I've been
Going
singing them praise the past couple just to get that far. I thought was really commendable. Totally agree.
For sure. I mean, at half, it was like, shoot, they might actually do this against
Yeah.
maybe the best team in the NFL. So,
And I think the
um,
rest of the NFL would send them flowers because we just said the Niners are scary. So if they were able to get in there and knock them out, it would have made everybody else feel better, I think.
exactly. In this round, another magical run. Jacksonville has gone from the depths of the dweller out there in the AFC South, and now they are facing maybe the conference's best in Kansas City, certainly the
Mhm.
number one seed. Um, considering, and I love my Chargers, man, I tell you, but considering the way that game looked, I think it will somewhat fog the judgment of Trevor Lawrence and this offense where they caught fire in the second half. But I gotta
Right.
say, a lot of those passes. I mean, Trevor Lawrence to me in that game was playing a lot of pitch and catch in the second half. I don't know what happened to the secondary in the second half, but Trevor Lawrence was not playing with much resistance that whole game. Maybe you could blame, Joey Bosa got incredibly frustrated in that game about
Yeah.
how the tackle seemed to be timing the snap. I don't know if you watched much of that, Phil, but it seemed almost as if because they were at home, they were able to kind of jump a half a second before so they can beat Bosa to the spot, but they're not going to get that advantage on the road, no matter how much Trevor Lawrence says.
Yeah.
That the noise is going to be the exact same. It definitely will not. Arrowhead
Well, I will
is one of
say,
the
I
loudest
get
places.
where he's getting at because I was at the game where they clinched the playoff spot in the South, and that place was packed, 70,000 large in Duval, and it was loud. I can attest to how loud it was, but they were not in the game I was at, and there was another reason factoring to me picking the Chargers was they played ugly. They needed that defensive touchdown to win, and they had a
Yeah.
great second half against the Chargers, but they're going to need to do that all game to beat the Chiefs. I mean, the
Mhm.
Chiefs went through that era where they kind of slept walk through teams, and they wake up and they're down two with 14, 10 minutes left in the fourth quarter, and then they come out and they win by 10, and that's what they've been doing. They've kind of gotten away from that. They're actually putting together full games. So, I mean, I don't think I'm going out on a ledge here saying this magical run probably does end here and the Chiefs take it. It might be a closer game than we're thinking. Obviously, they got caught napping against the Bengals last year. I think that's still fresh in their mind, and they might have to meet them in the next round depending on how this stuff goes down. But I'm definitely going to go with the Chiefs here. It might be closer than we're talking right now, but it'd be really hard to beat the Chiefs at home.
Yep, agreed. I think a lot of, people watching that game felt as much as that was Trevor Lawrence being excellent, and I think in the years to come that Dougie P, Trevor Lawrence combination is going to be one of the league's best. I think they've found magic there. They just need some help out wide, maybe one or two extra defensive pieces. And I think they really have something special there. But I think people watching last week felt that was as much the Chargers collapsing than it was Trevor Lawrence turning into, prime Tom Brady or something like that in the second half. And I think Kansas City is not going to have that. So I believe the Chiefs will get it done as well. And Vegas thinks the same thing. I think they're like a 9-point favorite, something like that. So they're not
Right.
giving the Jags much love at all.
Yeah, not to take anything away from them. Doug Peterson definitely like coach of the year potential with what he's done with that team. It's shown us how good he is as a coach and how bad Urban Meyer actually was last year. I think we know that for sure if we didn't already going
Yep.
into the year. Next up, my Eagles will play host to the New York Giants, 8:15 on Saturday night. Don't know that I've ever watched the Eagles play on a Saturday. It's going to be a weird experience. I will say that I am confident the Eagles can win. I'm not going to completely dismiss the Giants. They've been playing as good as this roster will allow. They're extremely limited at wide receiver. The guys they do have been playing above their pay grade for the whole second half of the year. That much I will say. Saquon Barkley is playing about as good as you would have hoped if you're a Giants fan. I mean, that's a guy that in college football is one of the most exciting players I've ever gotten to see play, and he's finally pulling that into the NFL. A healthy Saquon, and just everything is clicking for them. So I'm not saying it's impossible for them to pull the upset. On my confidence level going in to the playoffs, I would have maybe given it like an 8 or a 9. I'm probably at like a 7 confident for the Eagles, which I think is enough respect for what the Giants have done so far.
Yeah, I think if you were playing any wild card team at home in the divisional round, who wasn't in your own division, I think maybe you'd be slightly more confident.
Mhm.
But one thing in researching this game, I didn't realize Lane Johnson, who's going to play,
Yeah.
hasn't allowed a sack in 2 years. I
Absolutely,
knew
man.
he's
That
been
line and Kelsey's not far behind him. Obviously, it's hard to credit a center with a sack, but just playing it,
yeah.
got all pro again, fourth time in 5 years. So that line is gonna come together at the right time. It's huge.
I mean, I knew that line was incredible,
Yeah.
but I mean, those guys are maybe among the best. I mean, the NFL loves talking Trent Williams in San Francisco, but Philly's got a line that's as good as anybody in the NFL. And I think no matter what they throw at, the Giants do, I think Philly has the skill guys up front, where they can make Jalen Hurts feel very comfortable in his first real live action back from injury, first where he has a chance to prepare, rest, and feel like a little bit of himself since the injury. So I think that alone gives Philadelphia a pretty nice edge. And I'm with you. I believe the Eagles. It would be pretty shocking if they don't come away with a win here, even though it's hard to beat a team 3 times in one season.
It's hard to beat a team 3 times in one season. Whenever you play a divisional opponent in the playoffs, you can always throw the records out. We've had a lot of them already this year in this playoffs. We had the Seattle San Francisco. Then we had the Dolphins Bills is a great example. On paper, that should have been an easy game for the Bills, and it definitely wasn't. So
Bengals Ravens as
did you
well.
give a final pick? Oh yeah, and the Ravens Bengals was another example. So what's your final pick here?
It's Philly.
It's
It's
still
Philly.
Philly. Okay, great. So we will see that one on Saturday. Let's move over to the Sunday games, Bengals and Bills. This might be a similar to like the Chiefs Bills game of last season. If Buffalo is back, playing up to the ability of their opponent. Playoff Gabe Davis is very much a thing as he showed out in this game. But this one's hard to pick. I think going into the year, if you said, okay, divisional round, Bills, Bengals, I remember having my concerns if the Bengals could bounce back from losing the Super Bowl. They've respectfully, gotten this far. So I don't think they're not really that Super Bowl hangover team anymore. And you know what? I might have to go with the Bengals. The Bills have just not been. It's like they're missing one cylinder at any given time. At some point, it's the
Yeah.
defense. Other times, it's the run game. It's like they're running on 5 of 6 cylinders at all time, and the one that's out is different every time. And I think it's going to be just enough for the Bengals to potentially sneak in. I don't feel great about this one, but I think
Nope.
I'd feel even worse trying to pick the Bills. And maybe I'm wrong. As far as the AFC goes, I'd love to see the Bills take it if the Eagles can. I think I said that at the beginning of the year. But at this moment, as we sit here, I think I got to pick Cincy.
Well, I could give you the all of the statistics and the matchups and who's playing who and all that stuff. But really, to me, I mean, this almost would feel sacrilegious to go against Buffalo after what happened to DeMar Hamlin, and I'm
I
glad he's
agree.
doing all right.
Definitely a
you
factor.
know,
Yep.
yeah, so there's something special about that. The Bengals are down 3 of 5 offensive line starters. That's a big deal.
Huge.
Now,
Yep.
granted, they're facing a Bills front line without Von Miller, so that's something. But I think the fans luckily get a chance to finally see what we should have saw in Week 15 when the both teams were a little more healthy. I think that could have been one of the best games of the year, to be honest.
Absolutely.
It's
Yeah.
certainly pegged to be that. So I think Buffalo will ride the momentum of that, the momentum of DeMar, and I think um, the fact that they were able to get out of the game in Miami, having not played very well, I think
Mhm.
that almost is the same thing with how Philly got out of that game against the Giants, not playing well but still finding a way to win. To me, I give massive kudos and credit for a team that digs in and does that. You know, and has a chance to kind of fix those mistakes off a win versus off, going into next year. So I believe Buffalo gets it done, but just like you, I do not have a lot of confidence one way or the other. And that's the fun thing about the playoffs.
Yeah, definitely could go either way. Unlike, I think, like with this last game, the Cowboys played great despite the missed field goals. And when I say field goals, I mean extra points. And,
Yeah.
it might have been the Cowboys, but after the third one, I started to feel for the guy myself. And you would think it's impossible to have a repeat performance like that if you're the Cowboys kicker. But even if it's half that bad, if something's up with him, if he has the yips, whatever it might be, you can't. If you're going to beat this Niners team, you certainly cannot leave points, out there like that. So for that and the fact that other than Seattle, who again has seen this team for a third time, so that could expect why they maybe had a decent idea on what was going on. I think I still got to go with the Niners. I think the Brock Purdy show um, rolls on, and then I will be, it's very rare that I would be scared going into a game, but Eagles Niners with a trip to the Super Bowl, thank God it would be in the link because I will definitely be
Yeah.
feeling the heat on that, and I definitely have the Niners here.
I've been telling you all week I like Dallas, but I'm gonna switch my pick here for our wonderful Phil Talk Sports podcast. I got San Fran in this one because I just feel I almost can't even sleep this whole week thinking that I'm gonna pick the Cowboys and Dak Prescott over all of the legendary weapons that San Francisco has. I mean, I feel that they were a Super Bowl team before they traded for Christian McCaffrey. So it feel almost obnoxious for me to pick that. San Francisco might as well, and no slight at all to Philly, but they might just be the most talented team in the NFL
Right.
with just how many weapons they have. So I think we are destined for that matchup you're talking about, 1-2, and a chance, for the two best teams maybe in the whole league to match up there in the NFC title. Dallas, as great as they are offensively, points, scoring points, picking up yards. They're yet again number one in the NFL in that. But I believe that they just too many times shoot themselves in the foot, and kind of like how we saw Buffalo bring Miami back in the game. Dallas reminds me a lot of that type of team. They have fireworks all over, but they will consistently, whether it's maybe coaching or getting too fired up for a game. I don't know what the exact formula is, but they just will beat themselves sometimes. And I think the 49ers are too well coached to go along with too talented to let them come into San Francisco and beat them.
And with all the hiccups with Dallas, we talked about the kicks prior to that. Dak played a great game against Tampa, but he had 14 picks in his last 7 games. One of the best memes I saw all week was, I expect that kicker to throw his helmet next time Dak throws a stupid pick, like he did
Yeah.
against Washington to end the year, or the pick six against the Jaguars to seal that game. So they played the best version of themselves against Tampa. So it's one of those, like, was that it? Is the Michael secret stuff going to run out of the water bottle? Are they going to go back to making those silly decisions? And not to mention, you can never count out Mike McCarthy when it comes to clock management. He's been better, but you got to remember how this game went last year when Dak couldn't quite get the spike down to maybe kick a field goal, run for another play. It came down to something that quick. So, the Niners, I did just think of the safer bet, as we said, that their offense is both complex and simple enough for a rookie quarterback, a guy that was a 4-year starter in college. So give Brock Purdy his props and everything. But we're definitely going with the Niners. So the only thing we disagree with going into this week is the Cincy Buffalo game. We both kind of agreed that it could go either way. So we're just kind of mending both sides of the fences here.
Yeah, we both come together. We might have our differences, but we come together, you and me both, to agree that Jerry Jones needs to shut his mouth because this guy, yet again, before another big playoff game, says, I love my Cowboys' chances. We are destined for greatness. This looks like a team that will win the Super Bowl. It's like, Jerry, how many times do we have to teach you this lesson, old man? So this is a week where I think if San Francisco plays the game that we know they can, and they just played a team that rode them tough for a half, and they got all those playoff jitters out of the way. I think if the 49ers play their game, this could actually get ugly. So but other than that, it seems like you and me both have some pretty common opinions with these playoffs, and we can't wait to watch it.
My thing with the whole Jerry situation, like if you're in that organization and you're rolling your eyes at Jerry Jones saying that, get him away from the camera. What is he supposed to say? No, I'm shaking in my cowboy boots about Brock Purdy and Debo Samuel and Christian McCaffrey. Like, of course he's gonna say that. The key is don't give him the time to say that, I think is what it comes down to.
Exactly.
So we got about 10 minutes left here in the episode. I got a few things I wanted to talk about. We're gonna do this for a few minutes of it. We glossed over, Tampa's packed up, they're going home, and there's all this talk about what's Brady gonna do next. Is he gonna retire? Is he gonna come back to Tampa? He certainly said his goodbye to the media in Tampa. He made it seem like that was his last game as a Buccaneer, but not necessarily his last game in the NFL. Supposedly there's a market for him, but like did they not watch the last game he just played? Like, I can't imagine. I don't know how you feel, but the teams that people bring up, people still bring up San Francisco and they're 2 games from the Super Bowl. What kind of market do you think there even is for Brady? Because I think if he is going to play again, his best chance is right there in Tampa.
Yeah, I think based on how last year's playoff ended and then last week against Dallas and what he looked like this year, I do think somebody's going to trick themselves into thinking he'll go back in the time machine to 2020 or even earlier. But I think in terms of on the field as him being a difference maker, a real contributor to a playoff run, that's over. I think he is middle of the pack at best as a quarterback now, going into age 46, which is insane, absolutely insane. And I think wherever he goes and whatever he does, I think I can't give you an exact opinion on where he's going to go,
Sure.
but I think it isn't very significant, anyways. I don't think he's going to win a playoff game for the remainder of his career, no matter where he goes.
I mean, Brian Leftwich was let go today. That was, I assume, a Brady move. I don't think you're getting rid of these guys. I think you're trying to appease Brady to stay. Those are any moves the Bucks are making are with that in mind. So that would make me think he's going to come back. And I know you said you won't give an exact one, but you kind of nailed it. If there is a team that's going to be tricked into thinking he's going to go back in the time machine, who would you think it is? Like Vegas, maybe, possibly. Like that'd be my only guess. I think is a team that's gonna like think he's gonna go back to 2012 Brady would be a team like Vegas.
Yeah, probably Vegas. My gut feeling is he stays in Tampa one more year and then he retires next year when he finally realizes, yeah, I could have the 85 Bears, but still, I just don't have it. I'm not going to be able to win a Super Bowl again. So
Yeah, when he's
my
walking
gut,
off
he
the
stays in
field
Tampa.
in a wild card game. I mean, you got to remember, yeah, he made the playoffs, but he made it to 8-9. So even if he makes it to wild card weekend next year, I think will be a surprise, which is a shame because there is a great offense, weapons anyway in Tampa. I think the biggest thing is that run game is non-existent and was
Yep.
for the second half of the year. So they need to work on that line and they need to get someone that's not Leonard Fournette as your feature back. I think that would be a great place to start if you're them.
Yeah, playoff Lenny really 5 carries for 11 yards really showed out against Dallas last week.
So, two more quick things. I talked at the end of my last episode about Ed Reed becoming the head coach of Bethune Cookman, a school that you have a history with, Nick, as a former play by play guy of the Wildcats. And I was wondering, how this was going to go. And we are like 2 weeks into his tenure there. And so far, it's not going well. There is videos up about him complaining about, I don't know if it was trash on campus or the facility itself. Wasn't really clear, but Ed Reed doesn't seem very happy in Daytona Beach right now. I'm sure you're caught up on this. What are your opinions? First of the hire, I guess. I'll get that real quick out of you. And then what do
Yeah.
you think after seeing those videos?
Well, apparently he's not even hired yet because
Which I
he's
don't, what does
talking
that
on.
mean? You're there, man.
Yeah.
You're doing stuff. Like, of course you're hired.
Yeah. So watching the whole video, and by the way, I thought of you when you made a very intriguing point last time we were on, or actually no, when we were talking before this
Mm,
about how Ed Reed didn't get a chance to acquire, kind of like Deion Sanders, when he comes there at a moment at Jackson State where he can actually bring in recruits and bring in a transfer portal for his first year. That's kind of how he had immediate success there at Jackson State. Ed Reed didn't get that luxury. He came in, later in the process where he doesn't quite get the chance.
yeah, after signing day.
Yeah, to bring in quite the guys that like a guy who was there earlier could have. So that obviously is frustrating for him. And then not only that, but Bethune-Cookman. I was there when the team was a conference champion and had a couple of guys who just had made the NFL for a while, a la Nick Collins, Super Bowl champ of the Packers. Bethune-Cookman was riding off the coattails of that, and now this team is among the bottom feeders and even switched conferences now. So Ed
Right.
Reed's dealing with a lot more. And Bethune-Cookman, albeit a strong program in a talent-rich state in Florida, he's dealing with a lot out there. So, but in watching the videos and seeing him, in his mindset, I think he has overall the right mindset. This is a guy that, loves kids, loves, building football teams, loves building a culture. He's obviously one of the great NFL players of all time. And he just seems like a guy who's got, the right priorities. So I don't have any doubts that he's going to be a very solid coach in the near future.
I mean, he's definitely a guy that can make change. This is not a position you take if you're all about the money. Bethune-Cookman is not in a situation that they're going to outbid anybody for anything. So you're there because you want to make change, and I think he's the guy for the job. Before we get out of here, I want to start a new thing to kind of end the episodes. I'm going to start putting poll questions on my Twitter, and I actually got this one from the Rich Eisen show. So first, I'm going to ask Nick the question, get his answer, and then
Now, I
I will
don't know what
give
the question
and
is,
he
by
doesn't
the
know
way.
the question yet because he doesn't look at my Twitter. I don't know if he follows me anymore. I'll have to check that out. Um,
Whoa.
so this
Drama
was from
on Phil Talk Sports.
this was from the Rich Eisen show, and I thought it was really interesting. So Nick, if you could make one of these two things happen with one phone call, but you can only make one of the phone calls, would you rather make the phone call to give Reggie Bush his Heisman Trophy back, or to put Pete Rose in the Hall of Fame? Which one would you choose?
Reggie Bush.
Reggie, I mean, you are the California guy, so that's pretty obvious. And
Yeah.
uh, that
To
would
me,
almost
that would begin to remold the NCAA from being, the program or the company that it is, because
Mhm.
there is a lot of dirt in the NCAA. So to me, that would be a refreshment.
That's a good way to look at it. So surprisingly, the results of this, just squeaking by, 53% picked Pete Rose and 47% picked Reggie Bush.
Wow.
So I was a little just because this is my followers and my Twitter universe, and we're of the age that we are now. Plenty of baseball fans on my timeline as well, but I was surprised that Pete Rose snuck it out. But with your vote, that kind of evens it out just about. So that puts it almost right at 50-50. I had picked Pete
Well, in order
Rose.
to vote, I'd have to follow you,
That's
and
true. We have to
nobody's
check
trying to
that
do
out.
that.
So yeah, that was surprising. I want to start doing that. I'll do more of these polls and give the results on the episode because I think that was a pretty cool way to do it. I get the Pete Rose argument though. I mean, a sport that's all about hitting a baseball, the guy that did that more than anybody in the world in the history of the sport is not in the Hall of Fame. I get it, and the gambling thing is silly at the end of the day. But that's baseball is the last one to adapt to anything. We talk about the NCAA turning over a new
You
leaf.
know
That's
what? You got to make a great point.
I mean, there's great arguments for both. That's what makes it such a good question, I thought. That's
Yeah.
one of those deals. You still got that championship ring you're talking about? Bethune-Cookman winning
I
the
still do.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, since we'll bring it up next time
Sure,
because
sure,
yeah,
absolutely.
little
Running
too
out of
little
time here,
time
guys.
here.
But that's gonna do it for us. Enjoy the divisional weekend. Good to have Nick back and good to have everybody in, and we'll see you guys next time. Enjoy the weekend.